And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another spectacular installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the depths of the Middle Swamp in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday. It's day 3 of the Wyoming legislative session, and I have to tell you, my friends, I am already worn out. Oh, don't worry. I got lots more fuel in the tank. It just seems like after yesterday, this thing is droning on like a really bad symphony that never ends. So anyway, my friends, welcome back to the program. There's quite a bit to talk about. Lots of stuff happened yesterday. And okay, so I say lots of stuff, but really what I mean is lots of bills died on the floor of both chambers, really. But, you know, it is a budget session. And while there are lots of pieces of legislation that we'd like to see go through, really, if you read the Constitution, the main thing that we should be talking about is the budget. That's why everything else has a 2/3 threshold on it. And, you know, that's not to say that we can't talk about other things. It's that the main thing that we should be visiting about is the budget. That being said, I think it's absolutely worthwhile to look at who's killing all the bills, why are they doing it, and who might be helping it. So on today's program, there's a great piece up on the Open Range Record right now, and it goes through how the school recalibration bill died. And so that's probably where we're going to start this morning. But first, a couple of program notes before I forget. I just finished an interview with U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman. I'll bring that to you tomorrow on the program. It's a pretty interesting interview. She was going into a hearing with Pam Bondi, and it was she expected all of the questions to be about the Epstein files. And before you even say anything, before you even wonder, I did ask her the question that I have heard repeatedly, and that is, why don't we have people in handcuffs? We have had all these scandals, all of this government malfeasance going after President Trump. And we were promised from the very beginning, you're going to see people in brand new shiny silver bracelets. Well, so I asked Harriet why we haven't seen that. And I think she gives a pretty good answer, one that a lot of people haven't thought of. So that's going to be tomorrow on the program. And if you want to get a sneak peek into it, I'm going to publish that today on the podcast. And so really, really interesting discussion. And so anyway, we'll get to that tomorrow. But for today, like I said, if you go to the Open Range Record, by the way, thank you very much for all of the attention that you've given to it. I couldn't have thought that it would be as successful as it is. But the front page story, I guess in a newspaper you would call it above the fold, is a story entitled, 1 year after the school finance lawsuit, recalibration is still stalled. And it's by one of our great reporters. And by the way, let me say something about the team that we have assembled with the Open Range Record. They are a group of, crack journalists. None of them have a journalism degree, which I don't believe that you need that. If I did, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But they're doing some great work, great writing, and you should really go check it out. And thank you if you already had. So that's the openrangerecord.com. But the number one story on the hit list, like I said, is all about school recalibration. Now, to give you kind of the broad strokes before we get into the piece, the House version of the recalibration bill, which was House Bill 110, died on the floor of the House. It didn't get the 2/3 majority. Now, you might be asking, okay, well, wait a minute, David. That's spending. Is that not related? No. School funding is not part of the general budget. That's an entirely different funding mechanism. And so to get the recalibration bill passed, and by the way, the recalibration bill really isn't about funding at all, which is why it requires a 2/3 vote. That bill is about how we fund education, not how not how much or actually writing the check. It's the method behind it. How is it that we determine how school districts get their funding? And, there's a really complicated model, and we hire consultants and all that. So the legislature is required to do that every 5 years. And they haven't done it for a really long time, which is why this particular bill was so important. So let me just start out the piece, and I'm going to read you the first couple paragraphs, and then we'll talk about it. From the Open Range Record, and I quote, "It has now been 1 year since Laramie County District Judge ruled that Wyoming's public school funding system unconstitutional. A judgment that grew out of a lawsuit from the Wyoming Education Association. In that February 2025 ruling, Judge Peter Froelicher agreed that with plaintiffs that the state was not adequately accounting for inflation, competitive salaries, or essential services such as mental health counselors, school safety officers, nutrition programs, and student technology. He ordered the state to modify its funding model to meet constitutional standards that explicitly noted 2025 as was a recalibration year. Wyoming Public Media called it an excellent window of opportunity to address those deficiencies in the statutory regulation process. However, as a lot of these things end up in the Wyoming House of Representatives, the House version failed on a vote of 41-21. So just barely missed. And that's significant because one of the sometimes conservative people, actually, I think if you look at his voting record, he's probably more conservative than otherwise. Representative Bob Wharf voted with the liberal redcoats and the Democrats to kill the school recalibration bill. And if you scroll down in that article, let me just read you the no votes. Andrew Byron, Elisa Campbell, Ken Chestick, Ken Clouston, Marilyn Connolly, Davis Erickson, Steve Harshman, former Redcoat Speaker of the House, Julie Jarvis, Lloyd Larson, J.T. Larson, Bob Nicholas, Ivan Posey, Carly Provenza, Trey Sherwood, Liz Storr, Pam Thayer, Bob Wharf, J.D. Williams, Cody Wiley, and Mike Yen. So all the Democrats and the Redcoats and Bob Wharf. Thank you very much, Bob, for voting that way. Not so much. You probably made it a 50% chance that the court system is going to decide how we fund schools. And that's the court ruling basically said that if the legislature can't figure it out, then the court system will, which means that, it's as the article notes, that's a major separation of powers issue because that forces the court to legislate from the bench. That's not their job. Their job is to judge cases on their merits, good, bad, right, wrong, indifferent, whatever. Their job is not to write law. But and Wyoming has a history of doing this. One of the reasons why we have the school funding model that we do right now is the Campbell decision. That was a court decision quite a while ago where the court decided how we were going to fund education. So that takes care of the House. That bill died. Thanks for participating, I guess, Bob Wharf, but you probably shoved us into a lawsuit. Fantastic. On the Senate side, now this is an interesting twist, and the Open Range Record is the first publication that has this story. Let me read to you from the piece. And I quote, on the Senate side, Senate File 81, the recalibration bill, appeared on the printed Senate's introduction docket at 4:43 a.m. yesterday. On February 10th, it had been pulled off the docket by 8 a.m., meaning that they had planned to talk about it, it was on the list, and that somewhere between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m., Senate President Dennis Bo Beitman pulled it from the list. Sources have told the Open Range Record that Senate President Dennis Beitman has placed Senate File 81 in his drawer. What that means is it is the President of the Senate himself that has pulled the bill from discussion. What do they mean when they say it's in his drawer? First, it's not really a drawer. It's a locking cabinet. At least it is over in the House. But the Senate President and the Speaker of the House, they have the ability to just pull a piece of legislation and just not introduce it. And it can never see the light of day. And there's really the only way to pull it out of his drawer is by a 2/3 vote. And we saw that happen a lot of times with Albert Sommers. There were several attempts to pull bills from his drawer. I don't know that any of them were successful. And with Speaker Chip Nyman, I think that there's been at least a couple of them that they attempted to pull from the drawer. But as far as the recalibration bill, as of yesterday at 8 a.m., it had been pulled, and we've got some pretty good sources that have said that it's in the drawer. So very interesting, bad stuff, both the House and the Senate. Now, we did get a quotation from Majority Leader Scott Heiner. There's an error in the article. Got to fix that. But anyway, he basically said, let me go back to it real quick. So here's what Majority Leader Scott Heiner said. The WEA, school districts, and liberal legislators have made it clear that they do not want recalibration of our outdated public education funding model. These liberal legislators abdicated their constitutional duties to the courts and refused to let it come to the House floor for discussion. As a direct result, teachers will not get a well-deserved pay raise, nor additional adults. Okay, so I want to stop right there because it is not the legislature that has not been giving pay raises to teachers. It is the school districts themselves. As I have told you several times on the program, the legislature has actually been what I think pretty generous in giving school raises. And the best example of that is a piece of legislation from last session in which all teachers got an 8.5% raise. Now, there was only one school district in the entire state that actually did that, and that was Sublette County, and they gave higher than an 8% raise. So they were the only ones that were able to do that, or strike that. All of them were able to do that because those pay raises were fully funded by the legislature. They were the only school district that was willing to do that. So it's not that that school districts don't have the money to give pay raises. It's that school districts are unwilling to do that. Now, whether or not you agree with Representative Heiner or not, the timeline, you can't dispute it. In February of 2025, we had the court ruling. February of 2026, the recalibration bills in both chambers are stuck. One of them because of the Senate president, and one of them because of the Redcoats and Bob Wharf on the floor of the Wyoming House. And so, this is where enter the WEA, because they're the ones that filed the lawsuit. And it is absolutely inexplicable how they could try to figure out that we're not funding education adequately. Because last year, the number was $21,700 per student. So that's among the highest in the country. So I don't know how that they could draw the conclusion that we're not adequately funding education. The WEA successfully sued the state, arguing that the legislature failed its constitutional duty. A year later, here we are. And so what could happen now? Well, it could be that the Senate president is just trying to figure out if he has the votes or not to pass the recalibration bill. And it is highly likely, I think probable, that instead of putting that bill on the floor and watching it fail, that he's holding it and giving it time to whip votes. That would be my hope. Who knows? It may just be that the Senate wants to kill the recalibration bill like they killed the supplemental budget last year. So anyway, it's a really interesting article on the open range record, and you should go check it out. It's on the front page. It's entitled 1 Year After the School Finance Lawsuit, Recalibration Still Stalled. So go check that one out. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to go to the cow pie. There's a couple of really interesting pieces there. I say interesting only because we're going to have to give you the real story on them. So when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about what Gordon said over all those bills dying on the floor of the House. The governor thinks it's refreshing. I think it's a bunch of redcoat antics. So we'll do that when we come back. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Wednesday. I'm David Iverson, down in the middle swamp of Cheyenne. You know, and it's been a long time since I've explained to you what I mean by this whole middle swamp. You see, we got swamps all over the place when you're talking about government. And usually the big swamp is in Washington, D.C., and there's no question about that. But we also have our own little swamps in each town. And I think if you take a look at your local government, your county commissioners, your city council, there's a lot of stuff that they do that is pretty darn swampy. A good example of that is here in Cheyenne, the city council voted to allow administrative warrants. Basically, so without a judge, a bureaucrat can sign out an administrative warrant to come on your personal property. I think that's pretty swampy. Or, you know, there's Sheridan, in which they're, not even following the law and have failed audits year over year over year. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the little swamp. But the middle swamp, that's the one I meant right now. Cheyenne. And if you spend any time down here at all, you'll want to go take a shower. And, you know, I feel for the people that own the homes that pay the bills where I stay, because man, you got to take a shower every day around this place, or you're just not going to be able to see straight. I mean, it gets pretty slimy sometimes, and what we've seen on the floor of the House and the Senate already, it's kind of swampy. So anyway, there's a piece in the Cowpie entitled "Gordon, it's refreshing to see so many bills die because it's a budget session after all." Okay, well, and it's funny, you'll hear a discussion about this during the interview with Harriet Hageman, that our founders were pretty clear that they wanted two different distinct legislative sessions. They wanted a general session where you could talk about anything, and then they wanted a budget session. And that's why it's compressed. That's why there's a 2/3 vote threshold. And so, it's, I think it's pretty clear that that was the main purpose. Now, we pass all sorts of other types of bills during the legislative session, the budget session. That's where you see most gun bills run because it's always in an election year. And there's not any politician anywhere in Wyoming that wants to get caught voting against a gun bill. Though there were a lot of them in the House of Representatives yesterday that claimed to be Republicans that straight up voted against gun bills. One of those is Julie Jarvis. That's one of her main campaign things. She says, she grew up with guns her entire life. But yesterday on the floor of the House, man, yeah, it was no, right down the Democrat Party play. In fact, I'm pretty sure she went full-on Democrat. She wasn't alone. Elisa Campbell did the same thing. And pretty much all the liberal redcoats, they voted in a block with the Democrats. I'm pretty sure it's Ken Chestic or Mike Yin that's running that entire voting block. But that's all right. It's an election year, and there's going to be a lot of evidence that all of us can point to during the election to say, see, I told you, they're really Democrats. All right, so let's get back to the Cowpie piece. And I quote, at a press conference Tuesday, Mark Gordon said it was refreshing to see so many bills die. He said he sees that as a sign that lawmakers are respecting their higher priority of passing a 2-year state budget and doing so within 20 days. When numerous election reform and property tax reform bills failed to survive introductory votes in the House in the Wyoming legislature, Mark Gordon saw it as a sign. Gordon delivered these remarks during a roundtable-style press conference he hosted with reporters in the state capitol on Tuesday. Notice Cowboy state politics or the Open Range Record were not invited to this event. I wonder why. The Wyoming Constitution outlines a 20-day legislative budget session for even-numbered years and a 40-day general session for odd-numbered years. While the state legislature, has an unspoken tradition of deference towards bills that are from the interim or committee bills. A lot of them died on day one anyway. 21 of them did. Meanwhile, the House killed two pieces of legislation from the Revenue Committee that would have revamped property taxes, including one to eliminate residential property taxes altogether, and the Senate, well, they killed 3 of them. I think as these things may be discussed again in the future, Gordon said. He added, quote, this is a budget session. I have to tell you, I'm actually pretty thrilled that we're still respecting what we believe our Constitution says. Now, one of the reasons he's thrilled, because if the roles were reversed, say if, I don't know, the liberal redcoats were in charge of the legislature like they have been for, the last 40 years, Gordon would be singing a different tune, as he did 2 years ago. Now, there's a piece from 2024 in the Wyoming Turkey Vulture in which he says, quote, Gordon says national issues got in the way of legislation best for Wyoming. And so the killing of committee bills in 2024 is because everybody was focused on national issues. The killing of bills in 2026, well, that's because we're focusing on our constitutional duty. Do you see the hypocrisy here? I told you about this yesterday when I was referring to the articles from the Cowpie. 2 years ago, it was, can you see the horror? Oh, the humanity of it. 13 committee bills died. But this time around, Freedom Caucus not happy. Now we're getting down to budget-related issues. The hypocrisy of the Wyoming media is on full display, and so was the hypocrisy of the governor. None of these people have any self-awareness, and pretty much they all operate on revisionist history. But here's what that piece from 2024 says. Quote, Governor Mark Gordon met with members of the media Wednesday morning. See, another press conference I didn't get invited to. A prominent theme concerned the role of national issues played in dominating the discussions throughout this year's 37-day general session. Gordon said he was saddened by how much national issues got in the way of what he believes is the necessary work of the legislature. Quote, thinking about some of these issues were brought from out of state and really had momentum to them on the national level. I spend a lot of my time worrying about these things, he said. And there was a certain amount of absolutism that I think maybe got in the way of the best outcomes from the state of Wyoming. All right, so if you're a liberal redcoat and if you align with Governor Mark Gordon, then killing committee bills, well, that's paying attention to the interests of the state. That's doing what you're supposed to be doing. But if it's 2 years ago and the shoe is on the other foot, then it's, no, you're paying attention to national issues. That's why you're killing all these hard committee bills we worked so hard on. It's just absolutely incredible, my friends. Like I said, their hypocrisy knows no bounds. And that's why, by the way, this is why the open range record is going so good. And I couldn't be happier. And I cannot wait to see what that piece about Bob Wharf, and it's not all about Bob Wharf. He's kind of a footnote in it. But the whole point is he's the reason why, one of the reasons why that recalibration bill didn't survive introduction. Had he voted to actually, do his constitutional duty, well then we wouldn't be having this discussion. But anyway, so for a minute, let's kind of go to some national issues. Did you see where there was a member of the House of Representatives that asked a witness if he thought he was going to hell? Now, I do worry about the souls of many of the people down in Cheyenne and in Washington, D.C., and I do wonder whether or not they've considered their life choices and had a conversation with the big guy upstairs. But I don't think that I've ever heard of a representative ask a witness if he thought he was going to hell. Now I've got a video of this. I'm gonna go pull it up out of the archives. Just give me a second here. But and this is something that you don't see very often because I don't think that many people want to have this discussion. But anyway, here's Monica MacGyver. Listen, watch this.
I've heard my colleagues ask many questions over and over again, and you cannot answer them. So let me ask you some questions that you may be able to answer. Mr. Lyons, do you consider yourself a religious man?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yes. Okay, well, how do you think Judgment Day will work for you with so much blood on your hands?
Woo!
I'm not going to entertain that question.
Oh,
ma'am.
okay, of course not. Do you think you're going to hell, Mr. Lyons?
I'm not going to entertain.
Of course not. How many government...
The gentlelady will suspend.
How
The gentlelady will suspend.
Chairman?
A gentlelady will suspend. As I said, the issues we're debating here are important to ones that members feel deeply about.
Thank you,
While
Chairman.
vigorous disagreement is part of the legislative process, members are reminded that we must adhere to established standards of decorum and debate. The witnesses are here voluntarily, and I will continue to remind members that while oversight is important.
All right. So are you going to hell? Since you have so much blood on your hands. Incredible. All right, let's take our second break, and we'll continue with the program when we come back. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. Obviously, a record that the mainstream media, I just can't come anywhere close to, not that they even try. I mean, it's a budget session, so about the only thing they set out to do is make the redcoats look good and make conservatives look bad. And that's what they do all the time. And this session, I don't want you to lose sight of the absolute hypocrisy. We've got another piece coming on the Open Range Record showing you that. I'm going to show you the headlines from 2 years ago and the headlines today, and they're a little bit different. Kind of makes you think that maybe, just maybe, the media in Wyoming is not reporting the truth. A piece from Breitbart. Former consulate official, Somali nationals routinely lied to get U.S. visas. Shocking. Perish the thought. Who could have ever imagined that would happen? And I quote, former Foreign Service officer Simon Hankinson, who served at consulates in Ghana and Nairobi, among others, says Somali nationals routinely lied in their immigration applications to secure visas in the United States. In my consular assignments, I was lied to many times a day about every aspect of applications, including their age, name, identity, marital status, occupation, purpose of travel, wealth, income, you name it. Pretty much it's just in lies all the way through it. It's an unfortunate fact. People lie to get visas and immigration benefits. Now, Hankinson, who appeared before the committee to discuss visa fraud among the nation's immigrant population, said, quote, the more corrupt and poor the country is, the more there's visa fraud. And, you know, the biggest, there's a lot of implications of this. And we saw a lot of it, a big one, in Minnesota, where to the tune of billions of dollars, Somalis were sending money back home. That it was a massive fraud on the scale that nobody, I think, has ever, I mean, we've all probably kind of envisioned it. I mean, you can't send billions of dollars overseas to, drag queen events or something and expect that that's not going to be fraud. But it happens at all levels of government. One of the big ones in Wyoming is this so-called affordable housing scam that we've been covering on the Open Range Record. You fork out millions of dollars for these buildings, and they get handed over to developers who make a gigantic sum off of them, and then when the building is run down, it gets passed back to taxpayers. Look at us! Look at how magnanimous we are. We just gave you an entire building. Yeah, one that is in need of a complete renovation. But anyway, so the Democrats, and I think this one is pretty easy to understand. The reason why the Democrats are so in favor of immigration illegal immigration at every level, is that they think it will create a permanent Democrat majority voting bloc for them, and to a large degree, In some localities, like Minnesota, like in Minneapolis, that's the case. Let's not forget when, what's his name? Jacob Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis, when he gave his victory speech, he gave it in Somali. He didn't give it in English. He spoke straight up Somali for his victory address. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know, I don't know what will. But there is a report out from Project Veritas, one that I first one from them that I've seen in a really long time. And they're talking to a guy from the Department of State, and he absolutely confirms that that's what they're doing. Now, again, to be fair, this isn't a top guy in Project Veritas, or a top guy at the State Department, rather. But I think it does give you a glimpse into what's happening with illegal immigration. Now, you got to pay close attention because in this video, it's really difficult to understand what is being said. But here's that video.
A lot of people still trying to deny it. So how obvious is it that we are going through this, that this is the goal of our political system? Well, we actually have a guy from the State Department on tape saying, yeah, this is the purpose of this. This is the Democrats. This is what they're doing. They're using the Great Replacement to rig elections. They want the country to be less white because white people vote Republican. White people are conservatives. Here's the video.
Well, why are they allowing it? Truly, they want to change the demographics of the United States. They really do. Because, I mean, no, honestly, the people from Nebraska, like my family's like Americans that have, my family's been in the United States for 400 years. Traditional standard Americans are not leftists. Latin Americans all leftists. And it's just, it literally is. This is just to try to change the demographics.
Okay, so there you go.
So you have the video here from Project Veritas. I have an undercover guy speaking with the State Department official.
Okay, so anyway, there you go. And it seems to be a pretty obvious, standard that, indeed, what they're trying to do is create a permanent voting block. And I think that makes sense to most people. That's the only reason why the Democrats would be in favor of it. Now, fortunately, in Wyoming, just yesterday, I think, let me go look at the Cowboy again just to see. I know I watched this one. But there was a bill to allow, here you go. And no, that's not the right one. But a bill to allow us to prosecute non-English speaking truckers. And the title of this one from the Cowboy is Bill Letting All Wyoming Law Officers Cite Non-English Speaking Truckers Advances. Now, so before we get there, let me just address something. So there was a video or a post that was going around Twitter yesterday from the group Libs of TikTok. And they were talking about how all the Democrats voted against protecting little children. And I mean, it was pretty hideous to watch. But from that post, there were a lot of others that were saying, Wyoming advances bill. Well, okay, it's true. It does advance bill, but it didn't pass. That was just the vote to see whether or not we could talk about it. I mean, the bill's still got to go through committee. It still has to go through 3 readings in the House. It still has to go over to the Senate. It still has to go to the Senate committee. And it still has to go 3 readings in the Senate. And they have to pass it. And then it has to go to the governor. So there's a long ways to go on this thing. But when you're watching these posts online, make sure that you're double checking your information because, the lovely Christine showed me several yesterday that were from national sources that frankly don't know what the heck they're talking about. All right, back to this Cowboy piece. Bill letting all Wyoming law officers cite non-English speaking truckers advances. And I quote, a bill that would give all Wyoming law enforcement officers the authority to cite non-English proficient commercial truck drivers is poised to enter the House of Representatives after a legislative committee advanced it Tuesday by a unanimous vote. If it becomes law, House Bill 32 would task Wyoming law enforcement officers with enforcing a federal English proficiency test on commercial truck drivers. By the way, this is also a topic that Representative Hageman and I discussed during our interview. And again, I'll play that tomorrow on the live program. But if you want a sneak peek, listen to the podcast today. First-time violators would face a $1,000 fine and be banned from commercial driving in the state until they could demonstrate English language proficiency. Anyone caught? And okay, so is this how far we've come? that we can't just pass a law that says if you're an illegal immigrant, you can't drive a truck. We'll throw you in jail. You have to have a valid CDL. Can we not just do that? Or do we have to stoop to such level to say, you have to pass an English exam before before you're allowed to drive? Now, I think that's a good thing. I'm asking, is this where we're at? So instead of just passing a law that says, boom, if you're not a citizen, if you're not a full-blown citizen, or if you don't have diplomatic papers or legal status, then you can't drive. Can we just pass that? I mean, bills like this continually frustrate me because while I agree with it, if you can't read English, you probably shouldn't be driving. I mean, it's we got a lot of signs that you probably need to read. But can we not just say, hey, look, you need to be a legal resident? I don't know. I mean, there's no way somebody who cannot speak English or cannot read English can pass an exam to get a driver's license or a CDL. I know people that speak fluent English, well, kind of fluent English, and they have trouble passing the written exam. So, I mean, it's a sad commentary on where we are in the world. Let's see here. Representative Lloyd Larson.
Horse crap.
Moved for the committee to advance the bill during its Tuesday meeting in the state capitol, but he also voiced concern that by punishing drivers and not companies that hired them, the bill could be missing the problem. Quote, we don't do anything to the supplier, the bad actors, and this is classic Lloyd Larson. So yesterday, there was a bill to ban taxpayer funding of lobbyist organizations. Makes sense to me. I don't see why we should be footing the bill for all of these lobbying groups. And make no mistake, any of them, the County Commissioners Association, the Clerks Association, all of them, it has the word association in it. It is not a government entity. It is a private organization. And why we're paying dues to private lobbying groups is beyond me, and we couldn't get that one passed out of the floor anyway. But anyway, Lloyd Larson,
horse crap,
argued during that floor debate that they represent Wyoming citizens. It's why we should pay their dues. They really they're there for the good of the citizens. Well, no, they don't represent the constituency. They represent whomever is signing their paycheck. No, they're not representatives. Those are the people that we hold elections, that win elections that we all vote on. It's not lobbyists. So Lloyd Larson has made some crazy arguments. And by the way, there's another piece coming out of the Open Range Record, hopefully today, about Representative Larson. All right, anyway, we don't do anything to the supplier, the bad actors you're pointing out in a highly respected industry, really, Larson says, during an exchange with the Wyoming Trucking Association President Kevin Hawley. I still think that's a gap overall. Well, Lloyd Larson is misguided in a number of ways. Now, is it against the law to hire somebody who doesn't have a CDL? It might be. If they have legal status to be in the United States and they can legally be hired, then that's not a crime. Now, putting them in a truck, well, that's not a crime either. However, if you are the person that hops behind the wheel, yes, that is a crime because you don't have a valid license to drive it. But we don't punish companies that do that. You have to have a crime that is committed. And if indeed these companies are hiring people illegally, yes, that's a crime. But it is not necessarily a crime to just hire somebody that doesn't have a driver's license. I know there's a lot of grocery stores. There's a lot of employers that hire people that don't have driver's licenses. That's not a crime in and of itself, Lloyd Larson. Let's see here. Hawley noted that Congress last week passed a law to elevate the federal English language rule into federal law, which makes it a congressional law. It's not a congressional law. It's a law that supersedes administrative directives like the president's executive orders. That part is correct. That's after Barack Obama's administration in 2012 had paused the federal English proficiency rule. And just think about that. The President of the United States pauses a rule that you have to be able to read in order to have a driver's license. Just absolutely blows my mind. All right, my friends, one more break, and then we're going to finish up the program. But first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only going to continue to expand from every county in this state to every state in this country. Welcome back to the program, my friends. It's Cowboy State Politics Live, and it's a Wednesday, day 3 of the Wyoming legislative session. And sorry about the lighting in the video, man. It's kind of a weird day. I'll have that fixed probably tomorrow. Got some new lights coming in. You know, it's when you move into a new location, and it's during this, when I'm down here in the swamp, I'm rarely in the same place twice, though I do really like this house. I do like our setup here. But I mean, there's different challenges. So anyway, we'll fix the lighting issue for you tomorrow. Trust me, it's a work in progress. Give me a little break, man. I've moved entirely down here to the swamp for the legislative session. So anyway, welcome back to the program, my friends. Thank you for watching. Thank you for paying attention. Let's get back to the news. And it's, you know, the legislative session has just begun. And so many of the narratives that are going to happen We haven't even gotten anywhere close to him yet. I mean, it's day 3, and like I told Harriet this morning, man, I've only been through 2 days of this stuff, and I'm already worn out. So there's a lot of legislating to happen, and tempers are going to flare, and you can already start to see it in the House of Representatives. The Senate's different. The Senate's kind of like a tomb. It is really depressing going over there. I took some pictures yesterday, and I'll see if I can get those ready for you tomorrow. But everybody looks so bummed out. Nobody's having any fun. That's the reason why you see me in the House of Representatives so much, is it's just more fun. And you could pretty much cover just about everything that's happening in the session. Though I'm going to have to send a journalist or two over to the Senate for a couple days just to see what's happening. So another bill that met its demise, and I thought this one was an interesting one, but the title of the piece is Wyoming House Kills Bill to Make Counties Pay Costs for Self-Defense Acquittals. And so the bill was sponsored by Representative Gary Brown, and the idea behind it was that if you defend yourself and you're prosecuted, and it's found that you acted in self-defense, then the state pays your legal bills. Here's what the Cowboy says, notably Claire McFarland, and I quote: "A Wyoming bill that would have made counties reimburse people found not guilty of use of force crimes on self-defense grounds for all reasonable costs of their defense efforts failed its introductory vote Tuesday in the House of Representatives. The vote was 29 in favor, 32 against. Being a non-budget bill, okay, it had to pass the 2/3. Had it become law, House Bill 14 would have had juries, or in bench trials, the judges, determine whether the person acquitted of a crime on self-defense grounds should be reimbursed for his, and by the way, right below this comment isn't on the articles, an ad for Eric Barlow. There's a great piece about him on the Open Range Record. Go check it out. Then the judge would determine how much money the person should receive. People whose cases were dismissed before trial could also apply to the court for reimbursement under the bill, and the bill would have provided for the criminal record in those cases to be expunged." Let's see here. Representative Art Washut, who's been both a law enforcement officer and an instructor, he opposed the bills, and he says, quote, "Jury trials are unique experiences, and sometimes juries render verdicts that take you by surprise," said Washut. "I really worry that we put a terrible chilling effect on our prosecutors. They may be doing absolutely nothing wrong," he said. "And now we have local communities paying out big payments." All right, so let's just talk about carrying your concealed weapon for just a minute. If you have to use your weapon, what is going to happen is you will be arrested, and you probably will be prosecuted. And hopefully the facts will come out in the wash, in the trial. But you are going to be prosecuted, and you are going to be arrested, at least initially. So those voting yes on the bill were all, and again, I think this is an interesting bill. And then I think if it is found out, I mean, this is why our legal system exists. Notice I didn't call it a justice system. I called it a legal system. But to find out the facts of, a given event, how exactly did this thing pan out? And when you have somebody that's killed by a gun, the job of the police is not to judge crime. The job of the police is to arrest people and then arrange an appointment with a judge. That's their job. You don't want police officers judging crimes. You want to say, "Oh, okay, that looks like that guy committed a crime. Let's pop him and we'll take him before a judge." That's their only job. They arrange appointments. So anyway, those voting yes on the bill were Alamand, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Brady, Brown, Campbell, Guggenmoss, Haroldson, Scott Heiner, Paul Heft, Chris Knapp, Darren McCann, Tony Locke, Pepper Ottman, Agent 29, Representative Pendergraft, J.R. Riggins, Rachel Rodriguez-Williams, Mike Schmid, Daniel Singh, Tommy Straw, Clarence Stivar, Ruben Tarver, Jacob Wasserberger, Weber, Bob Wharf, he got one right this time, John Winter, Chip Nyman. Now, those voting no on this. Now, I don't want you to, all right, so I watched this vote and I thought it was interesting because some of the people you thought, okay, yeah, they're going to vote yes on this one, they didn't. And again, it is probably for the reason why that I mentioned earlier, that we take people before, before a judge and find out, okay, did they indeed violate the law? And this is the way our legal system works, that, if it's a fact-finding operation, which most trials ought to be, then, should the court pay your court costs or not? Well, the court doesn't pay the court costs of somebody who was, acquitted of murder or acquitted of theft or fraud, or we don't pay the court costs for any of these other people. Why would we do this in cases of self-defense? I personally, the more I think about it, not in favor. But here's the list of people voting no. Bear, Bratton, Brown, Elisa Campbell, no surprise there. Ken Chestic, Clouston, Connolly, Bob Davis, McKay Erickson, that guy's turning into be somebody we ought to pay attention to. Lee Filer, Representative Rob Geringer, Justin Fornstrom. By the way, that's the new guy in the House. He is turning out to be a straight-up redcoat. No surprise there. He is from Laramie County, so they're probably not going to pick a conservative. Steve Harshman, Jarvis, Steve Johnson, Lloyd Larson, J.T. Larson, Martha Lawley, Lean, Lucas, Nicholas, Posey, and let's see here, who else on the list? Okay, the rest of them, yeah, you already know. But here's the thing. This was a vote to just talk about a piece of legislation. It wasn't to pass a piece of legislation. It was just, should we even have this discussion? All the votes you saw yesterday, all the votes you saw on Monday, that's what they are. Should we talk about this during the budget session? And I think that this one is worthy of a conversation. I don't know that I necessarily agree with it. In fact, the more I think about it, I don't. But at the very least, we can have a conversation. Many of the bills that were killed yesterday, at least, I mean, most of those were personal bills, I ended up having just look at raising my eyebrows of people. Now, there's a comment on the thread here. We do not prosecute innocent people. That's not true at all. You don't know if somebody's innocent until the end of a trial. It is not the job of a law enforcement officer to judge guilt or innocence. That's the job of the courts. We don't know if a person is innocent or guilty until we have a trial. It's in the end, and some of these are pretty easy, right? So intruder comes into your house. He's in the house. He's not supposed to be there late at night, and you plug him. Okay, that one's pretty easy. But there are a lot of, so-called self-defense cases that may not turn out to be that. A lot of people claim self-defense when that's not nearly the case. But we don't know that until we have a trial. And you definitely don't want police being the judge and jury. That's not their job. They shouldn't do that. All right, my friends. Well, that pretty much does it for a busy broadcast hour down here in the swamp. I got to get ready to head over to the Capitol to find out what shenanigans our elected representatives are going to do. Don't miss the podcast this morning. I'm going to play that interview with Representative Harriet Hageman. It's an interesting one. Most of it we talk about Epstein, which I know that many of you have questions about. So I was totally down to have that conversation. So that'll be on the podcast. It'll be on the live program tomorrow. Have a good afternoon. Thank you for watching, my friends. But for now, from the from the depths of the middle. See, I still don't want to be here. From the depths of the middle swamp in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.